Welcome back, guys. My name is Tiffany Dawn. This is my husband, James, and this is another episode of life advice, sex advice that you do not hear in church. We are so excited to answer some of your 200 plus questions about sex. We're just going to get to as many as we can in the next 15 minutes or so. And we're also making some brand new videos based on your questions that we're adding to the wedding night talks. So I'll put the questions here on the screen. We're going to talk about these, and we talk about so many more questions in the wedding night talk. So if you haven't checked it out and you want sex ed as a single person, or to figure out how to have great sex in marriage, or what to know before your wedding night if you're saving sex for marriage, all of that, the wedding night talks are where to go. It is linked down below. So let's get right to your questions. So what are your thoughts on having dreams about sexual encounters?
Honestly, I used to get very worked up about these. I would if I would have one, I would think, oh no, does this mean I have feelings for the person who randomly appeared in this dream?
Is lust?
Is it lust? And I think the answer is you can't control your dreams.
Yeah.
You can't control if you have a wet dream, or if you dream about a specific person. I think that lust, if lust happens, it happens consciously while you're awake.
Yeah.
So I would not beat yourself up about that.
So bouncing off of that question, somebody asked, what about guys when they get an erection, or girls if they get wet, just being with their boyfriend or girlfriend, even if they're not doing anything that sexual. And again, that is just so normal. When you're first close to somebody, especially if it's the first few times you're even just hugging somebody or holding their hands, that can happen. And there's
Especially
nothing.
for a guy.
Yeah, and for a girl just as much. And there's nothing wrong with that. I remember my first boyfriend, that happened with me, and he had his arm around me, and I was leaning my head on his shoulder, and I was like, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? Why does my body feel so turned on right now? And I just felt so guilty about it. And I wish someone had told me that's how your body was made. God made you that way.
Yeah.
You're not sinning. This isn't wrong. It's just normal life. And I think we just need to take some pressure off of ourselves. There's this anything sexual is bad and wrong. And it's we are sexual beings too. And that doesn't just start when we get married. So this question, I just got married in October, and my husband is always wanting sex. He asks for it every 3 to 4 hours. He'll even wake me up in the middle of the night asking for it. How much is too much?
That's too much.
That is too much.
Yeah. And that's, there's always going to be differences, but that's beyond that's just a huge life inconvenience.
And that's not normal.
Yeah.
There's something else going on.
Yeah. And it might be as simple as he's I've waited my whole life to get this, and every moment I think about it, I'm I should go through with this. And that's just not the way that any adult deals with something they have an appetite for.
Right.
If I did that to the cookies I love so much, I don't think there would be room for Tiffany in this frame. It would just be James. Cookies.
Yeah, and if there's something else going on, it's something that he might want to dig into with a counselor, or depending on where it's coming from. Is it just what James was saying, or is there more to it? Is there something else going on?
But if you haven't voiced this at all yet, you really need to. You
Yeah.
want yourself to say, look, this is not enjoyable. This is inconvenient. I'm not enjoying this.
It's going to lead to a lot of resentment otherwise.
Yeah.
And fast. On a similar note, one of you wrote, how do you manage differences in sex drives? Should the partner with the lower sex drive try to fulfill their partner's needs, or expect some compromise? Do you want to take that one?
I think it's going to be expect some compromise.
Yeah.
Every single couple is going to have differing sex drives. It's just not possible for two people to have the exact same appetite all of the time. So there are, and it can't even be in different phases of life.
Yeah.
At one point it's one person, at one point it's another person. I think a key is communication pre-sex.
Yeah.
So if, for example, we are all night, we're getting ready to go to bed, and we finally lay down and we wind down, and I'm oh, by the way, can we have sex? That's not very thoughtful. I think that it's better to...
Especially if you're tired.
It's better to talk about it beforehand. So the more you can say, not necessarily, every Thursday night, but more you can say, hey, earlier in the day, could we do something? That makes it easier for you to have a conversation without there being some pressure.
Yeah,
For on both sides.
That's not to say you never like spontaneously initiate, but
Yeah.
when you do spontaneously initiate, it's in a low pressure way. And also you do compromise. So you might talk about it and one of you says, this is really important to me today. And maybe the other person says, okay, well, I can do that. Or could we try it tomorrow morning? Or, you have a dialogue about it and figure out what works.
Yes. And I'm not necessarily saying you should record like, hey, 8 out of the last 10 times we did it your way instead of my way. We need to talk. But you do need to feel like there is actual compromise happening, or the person who's doing the compromising is going to start to feel bad, and that's going to affect.
It's always the same person.
Not feel bad. They're going to start to feel taken advantage of in a way. And that's going to negatively affect your relationship on a number of levels.
Totally. That's a good point. So one of the questions that stuck out to me was, do husbands expect the wife to do anal or oral sex? Am I a bad wife for not being willing to do it? And this stood out to me because I've actually had friends say, my husband told me I'm not a good Christian wife if I won't do these things. And I thought that is so manipulative and wrong. Because the thing is, like, sex is supposed to be mutual, like stuff you are both comfortable with.
Yes, mutual.
Mutual pleasure, mutual comfort, like.
And it's a better experience for everybody when it's mutually.
Yeah. So if one person doesn't feel comfortable with a certain act,
then it's off the table for you.
Exactly.
And that's really the standard. It's not, what's the rule book say? It's, do we both want to do this?
Yeah.
Not like, and if the answer is no, then
and you don't force the other person
marriage.
to. Yeah. So I think we need to get this out of our heads that a good Christian wife will do whatever her husband wants, because that is false and that is just not biblical. Like,
and to
loving
be clear,
someone as your own body.
Yeah, that kind of manipulation happens outside of in Christian language. Like it's
happens
very
throughout.
Yeah, it's
marriages.
An extremely unhealthy power dynamic, and it is common in a lot of cultures.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you could do it over again, would you still wait until you were married to have sex?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially since, now we've been married for
almost 7 years. So
clearly, like, we're experts on anything. But it's not like I don't look back at the time before we were married and think, oh, if only we were having sex sooner, our relationship would be so different or be so much better. I agree. I don't think that at all.
Yeah. It was so special to I'm so glad we made out. I wouldn't have wanted to wait until our wedding day to kiss. It's totally fine if that's what you want to do.
It's true.
I would not. I'm glad we didn't do that.
Yeah, we had both kissed other people, so it wasn't something we felt.
It was really nice to slowly build up, and then on your wedding night, to have it be all new. It was really, really special.
It was special. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and sometimes I look back and I'm like, those days of dating were so special, even though that tension was always there that you're living in.
Should we do this? Should we not do this?
How far should we go? But it was so special because it just made it so it was just very fun to have the boundaries and stay within them. It was cool. It was, I don't know, zero regret. Yeah.
I think it was the most difficult in the moment. But in retrospect, it was wouldn't have done it differently.
Agreed. Let's see. I'm getting married soon and I have a health condition that means sex could potentially be more painful than for other people and I'm terrified. Okay, girl, I hear you. We talk about that a lot in the wedding night talks because that was true. I remember seeing my OBGYN and her saying something similar to me and saying, here's some ways you can prepare for it or what you do after you get married. So we talk about that a lot in the wedding night talks. There's no need to be afraid. There are great ways to handle it, but definitely learn about sex, talk to your doctor to know some steps that you can take, and check out the wedding night talks to learn more.
Yes. Yeah. My 2 cents is daylight conversations are very important. Talking to a medical professional, and I think obviously talking to your spouse too, but again, daylight hours, not like you're about to have sex and you're like, oh, by the way, I'm so nervous. Whoa.
Talk about it ahead of time.
And
take it slow, be gentle. Only do as much as is comfortable and not painful for you because you don't want to associate sex with pain. So your fiance is going to need to know ahead of time, we're going to be prepared for this. For us, I think it was 5 days into our marriage when we actually had sex.
Yes.
We'd done lots of stuff before that during our honeymoon and wedding night, and it was very fun and special, but we didn't want it to hurt for me. And so we took our time. We did these things the doctor taught me to do, and it was very special, but I think it made our sex life so much better because James didn't pressure me to like, just come on, suck it up and go with it. And so I don't have that association of sex being painful because it wasn't. Do you have a book list or something where you share a bunch of books about sex? Okay, I have 2 top resources for you. I would say this is my number 1 book recommendation. The Great Sex Rescue. Every man, every woman, single or married, should read this book. This is about a truly biblical approach to sex and also research-based approach to a healthy sex life. I think we've been taught a lot of things in church about sex that are truly toxic. And this helps kind of set the record straight. I highly recommend this book. It isn't a playbook of what to do exactly on your wedding night, but it is like, it sets kind of the bar for how you think about sex and how you approach it in your marriage, and it's so good.
Which is very important.
Yeah. The wedding night talks they are that playbook for here's how you actually have sex. Here's what you pack for your honeymoon. Technical resource. Yes. So definitely check those out too. There's also a book called The Big O that talks all about orgasm, and it has a section on men's orgasm and women's orgasm and techniques to help you get there. So I would say those are my top 3 books that I'd recommend right now. Okay, next question. How do you heal from body shaming from an abusive spouse or family? Sometimes men make hurtful comments about their wives' bodies and believe they're entitled to have these pornographic model wives. So if you're leaving that kind of relationship or have seen it, how do you heal from that?
I can even tell from reading this question how hurt this person has been.
Yeah.
And the advice that I thought immediately was, seek professional help.
Yeah.
But not in the sense of like, oh, gee, like you need professional help because I can't help you. Sometimes it sounds so demeaning. It's more like if you were to break a leg, like you wouldn't go to your mom and be like, Mom, could I have some Band-Aids for this? You would go to the emergency room.
Yeah, that's so
true. And in the same way, when you've been really hurt, it's like, it's so important to have, a really thoughtful professional work with you because the Band-Aid people, people from your church, well-meaning friends, might do stuff that doesn't really help, might say things that are hurtful, might point you in the wrong direction. So really getting good quality, professional help that can help you sort of develop something that's customized for you, for your situation to help you healed. Yeah. And then you can allow, your friends and your family to sort of fill in the pieces.
And I think too, like I was in a relationship, my first boyfriend, who had some of those expectations and would tell me, you're not as pretty as my ex, or you should lose weight, or expected me to look a certain way or pose a certain way. And I thought all men are like this. And I was so scared to get in another relationship. And when I worked through some of this with mentors and with counselors, and then when I got in a good relationship, it wasn't even James, it was the guy before James, and he treated me so differently. It was like very healing to realize not all guys are like that. So I think a healthy relationship down the road can be really healing too. Okay, next question. One of my biggest insecurities is if my husband will still find me attractive when my body changes. So this is something that I was really nervous about too. I'm someone who struggled with an eating disorder and just a lot of hatred of my body in the past. And so coming to terms with myself, even without thinking about aging or pregnancy, had been a really long road. So it's been amazing. It's been actually very healing for me to have had 2 kids now. And the second pregnancy, I've had a really hard time losing weight from it, between never sleeping, thanks to a sleepless baby, and having thyroid issues postpartum and all this stuff. So it's been a struggle to get the weight off. And I'm like 40 pounds heavier than when we got married, maybe even more than that. And to see James's reaction to my body still is like, he thinks it's so beautiful. And that has been a very healing thing. I've hated being in a place where I feel so out of control with my body, but it's been very healing for me to realize that I'm still worthy of love and my body is not what gives me my worth.
From my perspective, I really think, I don't speak for all guys, but like this sort of like, oh, that girl is attractive, I noticed her across the room. That is not really that's not really sexual attraction to your wife, at least it isn't for me. For me, it's more, this is the person that I've made my life with. She's, the mother of our girls. She does so much for us. I care so much about her. And
it's like the shared history.
Yeah. So the shared history is really meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, like sexually, like it's less about, wow, that person is so hot over there. And it's more about like how it feels and being close together, which I think doesn't have a lot to do, and from my perspective, with how much someone weighs or how, saggy or not saggy certain body parts are.
Yeah, it's true though.
Like
that shared history is really strong. Like it's something I didn't really give credit to before I got married. It was all like, I have to look hot, I have to look a certain way. And I think when you're in a healthy relationship, that shared history is really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, and I think from my perspective, the loss of like sexual attraction would be, hey, my wife doesn't seem interested in sex with me, or doesn't seem interested.
Not that you sometimes
or like just doesn't seem to pay attention to me as a person.
Doesn't care about me.
Yeah.
You can be with someone who's super hot and they're a jerk and you're just not sexually attracted to them. Like I used to think it's just about if a guy is hot, and I look at some of the guys that I used to think, oh, they're so hot, and I'm like, wow, if I was married to that person, like with their severe anger issues or with their selfishness and not being willing to do their own laundry. Like I hear stories about people and I'm like, I would not want to have sex with that person. I don't care how hot they are. Like the sexual attraction would be gone. So it's really, I think sexual attraction is about much more than just what you look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So guys, I hope that this can help, and thank you for all your questions. Check out the Wedding Night Talks if you haven't already, and we'll see you next week for more videos about relationships. Bye.